Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you unfamiliar with my work, every year I read through every issue of every English language nutrition journal in the world, so you don't have to. So every year my presentations are brand new because every year the science is brand new. I then try to compile all the most interesting, the most groundbreaking, the most kind of landmark work, practical work into a quiz show format. In a few moments I'll ask, well, throughout the talk, I'll ask people to stand up. We'll play a few games. If you get the answer right, you get to remain standing. If you get the answer wrong, you need to sit down, and we'll keep going to see who the last person is standing. Anyone have any questions before we begin? Doesn't anybody want to know what they win? The last person standing each round will win a brand new CD-ROM created containing 2,000 of the latest, greatest articles published in the nutrition literature, the peer-reviewed literature. Your own personal nutrition library on a disc. It is not for sale, even if you beg. You've got to win it, all right? And in fact, if I could get someone in the box outside with all my DVDs, I have a stack of these prize DVDs. If someone could grab me that stack, fantastic, and then I'll have them, because there'll be so many winners here in smart Austin. Most everything I'm going to talk about today is taken from my Volume 5 DVD, all proceeds of which go to charity. With only 45 minutes, I can just touch on a few of these, but let's start at the top. The antioxidant content of 3,139 foods. In the beginning, blueberries were the best. And then walnuts took the title, then wild blueberries took it back. Then small red beans were considered the most antioxidant-packed food on the planet until herbs and spices were tested. Now, frankly, I thought it was over in 2007. The USDA had tested 277 foods. Sure, when only 40 foods were tested, blueberries were number one, but when hundreds of foods were tested, blueberries didn't even make the top 10. And if you see my talks in the past, you know that I rated them for you by serving size. I rated them for you by kind of antioxidant bang for your buck in terms of per unit cost. Mission accomplished until last year. The total antioxidant content of more than 3,000 foods. I mean, are there even 3,000 foods out there? Right? You know you're in for a wild ride when looking at just the first page of the 138-page chart that accompanied the study, when there's not only something as exotic as gooseberries or Indian gooseberries or even Indian gooseberries in a can, but even the antioxidant power of the syrup from a can of Indian gooseberries. They tested 30 different beers. For those of us who stay awake all night wondering whether there's more antioxidants in Coors or Bud Light, and the answer? Miller, by a hair, actually. But nothing compared to Santa Claus beer from Austria, which beat out Guinness and put all the others to shame. Don't laugh. The standard American diet is so pitiful that beer represents the 5th largest source of antioxidants in the American diet. They measured Cap'n Crunch, the antioxidant content of Tootsie Rolls, Krispy Kreme, to the crushed dried leaves of the African baobab tree. Everything from the skim and organic lemon to Norwegian jungle dessert. It took them 8 years to compile this data, but now it is ours. All right. So what practical implications does this amazing new body of data have in terms of us making day-to-day practical grocery store decisions? Well, for example, you may have seen these new gold kiwi fruits on the market. Are they any better than the regular green kiwi fruits? Let's get everybody on their feet and find out. With a show of hands, you only get to choose one. How many people think the original green is the best? Raise your hand. How many people think, no, the gold is better? Raise your hand. And it turns out the gold is about 4 times better. So even if they're twice as expensive, 3 times as expensive, still makes sense to go for the gold. If you did not choose gold, please sit down. We'll go on to our next round. All right, not bad. Oh, we got like the smart side of the room, and all right, not bad. All right, I'll have you, for those standing, remember who you are. I'll have you sit down and just get you back up for the next round. I just want to take a step back for a moment to what does this amazing body of new evidence have to say about what we should eat in general? I mean, we can go on and on about the specifics, but the first thing they did, actually if we can get the screen down just a little bit, just cutting off a little bit of the top, but no big deal. The first thing they did, so this is table 1, is they split everything up into plant foods and animal foods. As you can see, the average antioxidant power of plant foods is 1,157. The average antioxidant broccoli. All right, the average antioxidant content of animal-based foods is 18 in comparison, right? So 18. So on average, meat, fish, eggs, dairy has 64 times fewer antioxidants than your average plant food. So every time we eat something in this column, we're missing out on an opportunity to eat something in this column. So this alone is a powerful argument to begin transitioning to a more plant-based diet. Now, as you can see, animal foods max out at 100, plant foods 289,000. All right, but is that really a fair comparison? Included in the plant food group were all sorts of things you could really never find in a store, like these exotic wild berries, which really kind of skewed the chart upwards for plant foods, gave them kind of an unfair advantage. You know, people eat corn, they don't eat, dried Norwegian corn flowers. So let's bring it down to earth. The average plant food does indeed have over 1,000 units of antioxidant power, but just to be fair to the animal foods, always got to root for the underdog, I'm going to choose the least healthy plant food I can think of, and that is good old American iceberg lettuce. Now, iceberg lettuce does not have 1,000 units of antioxidant power like your average plant food. It has 17. All right, so as you can see, I've changed the scale here. So this maximum is at 100. So this is way, way down at the bottom in terms of foods with the lowest amount of these anti-aging, anti-cancer, antioxidants. All right. So as plants go, lettuce is a loser. Only about 1% of the antioxidant power of your average plant food, but it still beats out fish, which comes in 11. Salmon comes in at 7. Chicken is 6, right? So chicken has nearly a third of the antioxidant content found in iceberg lettuce. Hard-boiled egg comes in at 2. Egg beaters, which is just the whites, 0. Even Coca-Cola's got 4. Which, same amount that's found in cow's milk, though soy milk only has about, and yogurt, soy milk only has about twice that amount. The best animal foods can do in the meat category is the liver of an ox at 71. Beat out moose meat, beat out reindeer steak. Told you they measured everything, but even moose meat, excuse me, not moose meat, even ox livers couldn't quite beat out the antioxidant content of a candy bar. Right? So, even if we lived off of ox livers, the wild blueberry of the animal kingdom, right, one of the few animal foods that can beat out lettuce, we'd still never meet our daily antioxidant needs. I have to say, though, there was one animal product that kicked some serious tush up at 203 here. There's some berries that aren't even that antioxidant rich. A food so healthy, I must encourage everyone to eat it when you're a baby. That's the antioxidant content of human breast milk. The really only truly healthy animal product for human consumption. In infancy, breast is best. After infancy, plants are preferred. All right, next up, let's skip to eggs here. The egg industry just got their huevos handed to them in this damning new report in the Canadian Journal of Cardiology by 3 academic heavy hitters. This is Dr. David Spence, who is the director of the Atherosclerosis Prevention Research Center, David Jenkins, the guy who invented the glycemic index, and Dr. Davignon, who is the head of the hyperlipidemia research group at the Institute for Clinical Research. Now, the last time, that Dr. Spence spoke out against eggs, his house got its cholesterol raised too. But the reason they felt the need to set the record straight is, as they said, recent media reports reflect the remarkable effectiveness of the sustained propaganda campaign by the industry to downplay the risk of cholesterol. See, the fundamental flaw, they point out, in all the studies that the egg industry funded to downplay the risk of cholesterol is that in the studies they very carefully only measured fasting cholesterol levels, which just measures what's happening in your arteries the last few hours of the night before you eat breakfast. And when you actually measure cholesterol during the day, when most people live their lives, in a postprandial state, we find that the cholesterol in eggs increases susceptibility of bad cholesterol to oxidation, inflames our arteries, oxidative stress, postprandial hyperlipidemia, which is this boost in lipids after we eat, potentiates harmful effects of saturated fat, impairs the function of the lining of our arteries, and increases cardiovascular events, which means heart attack. So, okay, fine, okay, maybe an omelet isn't good, but how much cholesterol could there be in just like one egg? Well, depends on the size. Single egg, between 215 and 275 milligrams of cholesterol. So the yolk of one egg provides more than that found in a Hardee's Monster Thick Burger, which is 2/3 a pound of beef, 3 slices of cheese, 4 strips of bacon. Now, when this article came out, the media storm that followed the publication compared eggs to the fast food monstrosity du jour, the KFC Double Down, where even the bun is made out of meat. As they say, which came worst, the chicken or the egg, obviously. All right. A single egg yolk thus exceeds the recommended daily intake of cholesterol, 1 egg. So you have 1 egg, and then even if the rest of the day you just ate celery, you'd still be over the limit. Now, the egg industry, however, would rather blame the bacon and hash browns. That's the real problem, they say, according to the egg industry. Railing against this myth, as they say, that eggs are the most concentrated source of dietary cholesterol. And that's actually true. It is a myth. If you look at the official USDA nutrient database, eggs are not the #1 most concentrated source. They are, in fact, #2. #1 goes to brains. Veal brains, beef brains, pork brains, lamb brains, raw pig brains, more veal, and only then egg. And so then we have more brains, eggs, brains, eggs, brains, eggs, and eggs. So the only population at higher risk than egg eaters, zombies. The bottom line here, look, if you're going to do veal brains, definitely pan-fried, not braised, because that's just crazy. This devastating new review implicating egg consumption did not go over easy with the egg industry. They countered that the overly restricted 200 milligram upper safety limit for cholesterol that wouldn't even allow a single egg is only for people at risk for vascular disease, for heart disease, to which the lead researcher said, well, look, most everyone is at risk for heart disease. The only ones who should eat an egg yolk regularly with impunity would be those who expect to die prematurely from non-vascular causes. In other words, his famous, the only people who should eat eggs regularly are those with a terminal illness, right? Because then you're going to drop dead. Okay, go bungee jump, whatever you want to do. You're not going to live very long anyway. In their landmark review, they conclude that, look, waiting until your first stroke, heart attack, diabetes diagnosis before avoiding eggs is a bit too late. Stopping egg consumption after a heart attack or stroke would be like quitting smoking after lung cancer is diagnosed. A necessary act, but late. Now, the egg industry likes to boast, though, that eggs have these 2 compounds, lutein and zeaxanthin. What the egg industry does is they feed hens marigold petals and all sorts of things to boost the levels egg content up to 166 micrograms, or even there's some eggs 250 micrograms of these important eyesight protecting phytonutrients. So they say, look, don't worry about cholesterol. Eat eggs to protect your sight. All right? Well, so here's eggs. 200. The most that they found in eggs, 250. Compare that to a cup of cooked carrots, which has over 1,000. Collard greens closer to 15,000, and then kale tops the charts at nearly 24,000, leaving eggs in the dust. A single spoonful of spinach has as much as 9 eggs. 1 spoonful. All right. Now the recommendation is we really should get, to protect our vision, should get about 10,000 a day. All right, now that's about the amount found in a 1/3 cup of spinach. Well, that's doable, right? 1/3 cup of spinach a day. Or 40 eggs, more than 3 cartons of eggs every day to get our minimum, and that is nutrition unscrambled according to the egg industry. Here are the top 10 sources of these critical eyesight-saving nutrients. Let's go down the list. Spinach, kale, spinach, turnip greens, collard, all greens down the list. In fact, eggs don't even make the top 100 sources. To get down to eggs, you've got to scroll down a few pages, and according to the USDA, eggs coming right behind, here's eggs coming right behind Cap'n Crunch with Crunch Berries. Cap'n Crunch, and then eggs, right? There are more phytonutrients in Crunch Berries than there are in eggs. All right. I'm going to have to skip over. Let me see, PCBs, mammograms, vitamins, multivitamins. Oh, yeah, all right, sorry. I'll be outside answering questions before I have to run to the airport if anyone has additional questions about some of these other things. But I would like to talk about breast cancer, the #1 cancer killer among young women. Last year, a study was published that looked at comparing hormonal levels of women with and without breast cancer. Since most breast tumors are estrogen receptor positive, meaning estrogen makes them grow, one would assume those women with breast cancer would have higher levels of estrogen than those without, or at least without yet. And indeed, that's what they found. They found significantly more estrogen in those with breast cancer compared to those without. But what they also did is they looked at diets and hormonal levels. These were all women eating mixed diets. Women eating vegetarian did significantly better. And this may explain why, in a study of relative risk for breast cancer by levels of animal product consumption, as you can see, there's a trend towards the more plant-based diet. There is a decreased breast cancer risk, and it was a study at my alma mater, Tufts, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, that figured it out why. See, the way our bodies get rid of excess cholesterol is our bodies dumped cholesterol into the digestive tract, knowing full well that there'll be lots of fiber in there to grab onto it, hold it, and flush it out of the body. So hopefully you chew a little bit better than that. We did, after all, evolve quite a long time before the ascension of Wonder Bread and royal establishments like Burger King and Dairy Queen. Our bodies just expected. Evolved for millions of years. We expected our bodies our intestines being packed with fiber all day long, probably about on the order of 7 times more than what we're averaging now. We did certainly evolve eating some meat, but plants don't tend to run as fast, so the bulk of our diet was made up of a lot of bulk. And that's how our body gets rid of excess estrogen as well. Vegetarian women have increased fiber input, so vegetarian women have increased fecal output, which leads to decreased fecal excretion of estrogen and decreased plasma concentrations, blood concentrations of estrogen. And this wasn't just in theory, they actually measured it. What they did is subjects were provided with plastic bags and insulated boxes filled with dry ice for 3 24-hour fecal collections. You've heard of popsicles, it's more like poopsicles, but this is what they found. In any one 24-hour period, right, the vegetarians were fecal excreting more than twice as much estrogen as the omnivores, and measuring estrogen excretion versus fecal weight versus stool size. As you can see, the bigger the better. See all these heavyweight V's versus the welterweight O's or omnivores, right? This is, so no wonder that vegetarian women in the United States have significantly lower breast cancer rates than others. So it's great that so many women stopped taking hormone replacement therapy like Premarin in 2002 when we found out actually increased breast cancer rates. It's great that women stopped taking extra estrogens, but another way one can get rid of excess estrogens is in the way nature intended. The bigger our bowel movements, the healthier we may be. The risk of low stool weight includes bowel cancer and diverticulosis and appendicitis and various anal diseases and perhaps even the healthfulness of breast tissue. This is from a study across 23 populations in a dozen countries, a graph. Average stool weight versus colon cancer incidence. As you can see, large stool weight, low colon cancer risk, right? Low stool weight, high colon cancer risk, right? So once you start getting down to about a half pound stool weight, about 200 grams a day, you can see colon cancer rates really skyrocket. And once you start dropping quarter pounders, we're talking a quadrupling of colon cancer risk. And now the link between stool size and colon cancer, we think, is because of transit time, the number of hours it takes for food to get from one end to the other. And with more fiber in our system, with a larger bulk, it's easier for our intestines to move things along quickly. How long it takes for things to get from one end to the other depends on two things: gender and eating style. If you are a vegetarian male, here's non-vegetarians, here's vegetarians, males, females. If you're a vegetarian male, only 1 or 2 days. Mouth to anus transit time. However, if you eat meat, it could be up to 5 days. Similarly, vegetarian women, mostly 1 or 2 days, but this is interesting. The average meat-eating woman in the United States has a 4-day intestinal transit time, all right? People don't realize you can have daily bowel movements and still be effectively constipated, right? You can be regular, but 4 days late. What you're flushing down today, you may have eaten last week, which is not good in terms of cancer risk. Now, if you want to test it for yourself, all you need to do is eat a big bowl of beets, see when things turn pretty in pink, right? We're looking for 24 to 36 hours. That's our goal. And indeed, if it is just a day or two, so this is hours in transit time, so if we are down about 24, 36 hours, as you can see, we're going to average out that 200 gram stool weight, which is our target. However, if you're like the average meat-eating woman in the United States, up at 4 days, you can see we're never going to make it out that far. Now, if you have a really good bathroom scale, you can measure stool weight directly by measuring yourself before and after. I don't know what you were thinking. All right, who's number 1 at number 2? What is the country with the largest bowel movements? All right, is it Denmark, India, Japan, New Zealand, South Africa, Tonga, an island in the South Pacific, UK, or the US of A? All right, here's the graph. As you can see, only 2 countries made the cut. Here's the 200 gram cutoff, which is the minimum fecal stool weight for the day, which we want. Everyone else fell short. First of all, for our first question, who's this one? Which is the nation with the smallest bowel movements? Let's get those up who got the kiwi fruit one right, just those. And we'll see who's the fecal featherweight. With a show of hands, all right, how many people think Danish bowel movements are the smallest? Raise your hand. How many people think Indian smallest? Japanese, Kiwi, South African, Tonganese, UK, or US of A? Look at these patriots here. Let's see. And the answer is red, white, and blue poo. Congratulations. Very nice. How'd we do? Pretty good. All right. So then the next question is, all right, what's this one? Who's the leader of the pack here? The country with the largest bowel movements. And I'd love to go around the room if we had time, but we don't. So let's just do by a show of hands again. Largest bowel movements. Who thinks it was who's the first one? Denmark, number 1. India, Japan, New Zealand, South Africa, Tonga, and who thinks it was the Brits that put us to shame? And the winner of the Bowels of the Earth contest was Tonga at 531. Anybody get that? We have one. We have 4 winners. Congratulations. Pass those back. Fantastic. All right. Okay. Now, the only other country that made that 200-gram target was India. Although there were individual measurements that went as high as 1,505 grams, that's like 3 pounds. That is a lot of samosas. And as you see, Japan almost made it, but everyone else fell short. Now, U.S. vegetarians did much better, and British vegetarians, and particularly vegans. There was actually one population that did even worse than the standard American diet. Actually, this is the population with the smallest average bowel movement size ever recorded. What was it? New Yorkers. 3 ounces a day. If they'd actually, instead of just living there, eat a big apple once in a while, maybe this wouldn't be a problem. All right. All right, but what were they eating in Tonga? Well, this was taken when they were eating their traditional plant-based diet, which was lots of greens and fruits and vegetables, etc. Now, the #1 food in the Tonganese diet is imported chicken parts. And this is what happened. They went from one of the healthiest nations on the planet to one of the fattest nations on the planet, thanks in part to the westernization of their diets. Whew. 9 minutes. All right. Medicare is in trouble. How could we possibly save some money? Well, according to the American Heart Association, heart disease alone, $500 billion it costs us. So no wonder one of the most exciting new developments in the field of lifestyle medicine. Finally, Medicare started accepting for reimbursement the Dr. Dean Ornish program for reversing heart disease, as well as the Pritikin program. So now hospitals can get reimbursed for reversing heart disease with diet instead of just kind of queuing people up for their next coronary artery bypass operation. Now, many of you have heard of Dr. Dean Ornish, but may not be as familiar with Nathan Pritikin, who was kind of the original lifestyle medicine pioneer who was reversing heart disease with diet back in the 70s, as you can tell by his getup here. And on a kind of personal note, Pritikin was actually the reason why this little freckled fellow went to medical school. Yes, indeed. You know, I think for many kids, the kind of spark to want to be a doctor when they grow up is seeing a grandparent get sick or even die. But for me, I was watching my grandma get better. This is my grandma 15 years at her grandson's wedding, 15 years after she was given a medical death sentence. She was sent home to die. She had already had so many bypass operations, they basically ran out of plumbing, couldn't do any more surgery, sent her home, wheelchair bound. Until she heard about Pritikin, which is you go there, they put you on a plant-based diet, teach you how to cook, and they wheeled her in, and she walked out. I'll never forget that. She's actually, thank you. She's mentioned in the actual Pritikin's official biography, The Man Who Healed America's Heart. These were the death's door people recalled an early administrator like Francis Greger. Who arrived in a wheelchair, heart disease, angina, claudication. Her condition is so bad she can no longer walk without great pain in her chest and legs. Within 3 weeks, she was not only out of her wheelchair, she was walking 10 miles a day. Now, in the end, my grandma's recovery from terminal heart disease, as amazing as it was, is just one anecdote among many. It did inspire my career in medicine, but it wasn't until 1990, with the publication of the Lifestyle Heart Trial by Dr. Dean Ornish in probably the most prestigious medical journal in the world, that we finally had it proof in black and white that you cannot just slow down heart disease, our #1 killer of both men and women, not just stop heart disease in its tracks, but actually reverse heart disease, open up arteries without drugs, without surgery, with just healthy lifestyle changes, including a plant-based diet. Now, Pritikin had been doing this for years, but he never published. And so this was finally we had proof. Now, since then, since 1990, millions have died. totally unnecessary deaths. Right? We have the miracle cure. We've had it for decades, yet no one seems to know about it. Right? Oh, wait a second. If we can reverse heart disease without drugs, without surgery, then hey, great. Can't we just eat whatever the heck we want and then feel a little chest pain? Okay, go with the program, start eating healthy, reverse heart disease, open up our arteries, right? And then have, decades of memories of not just our grandchildren, but, happy memories of chicken wings and, cheeseburgers, etc. Well, here's the problem with that strategy. It's called sudden cardiac death. Our first symptom may be our last. Now, what do they mean by sudden cardiac death? Well, it's defined as sudden, unexpected death from heart disease, caused generally within an hour of the first symptom in a person with no known previous symptoms or heart condition. So you had no idea you have heart disease, and then from the first time you feel something, you're dead within 60 minutes. That's the definition. All right. Now, most people know, number one killer of both men and women in the United States for the last 79 years or so is heart disease. But what people may not know is that for the majority of Americans that die of heart disease, their first symptoms, it doesn't happen years before they die, but literally minutes before they die. First symptoms, minutes before your death. And in that last hour on this earth, right, in agony, all the dietary change in the world isn't going to make a difference. Even if the paramedics snatch our chicken wings away, refuse to stop at our favorite fast food joint on the way to the hospital, it's probably just too late. All right, one moment we could be with our family feeling fine, and less than an hour later, we could be dead. The number one cause in America, number one cause of death is not just heart disease, but specifically sudden cardiac death, the most common cause of death in this country. And that means people dying not just later in life, in their 30s, 40s, 50s of sudden cardiac death. Now, is that just what happens when we get old? Our ticker kind of conks out, our pump wears out on us? No, and that's where Dr. T. Colin Campbell's work came in, and that's why it was so important. He's the reason I chose to go to Cornell. At the same time Ornish was studying hundreds of people on a plant-based diet, Dr. Dean Ornish and colleagues were studying hundreds of thousands. Here's just one of the 894 pages of the Cornell China Oxford study, and let me just share one statistic. Guizhou County in China. Among a population of 246,000 men followed over a 3-year period, there was not a single recorded death from coronary artery disease. If that was in the U.S., that many men over that long a time, there'd be thousands of deaths, but instead there wasn't one. There's nothing natural about getting or dying from heart disease. The fact is that a good vegan diet is likely to reduce the risk for most types of cancer, ischemic heart disease and its complications, obesity, diabetes, hypertension, osteoporosis, multiple sclerosis, gallstones, renal stones, appendicitis, diverticulitis, hiatal hernia, varicose veins, hemorrhoids, and possibly the chief metabolic complications of pregnancy disorders, which collectively are responsible for the majority of deaths and hospitalizations in Western society. That should be enough. That should be sufficient to recommend the diet. And of course, those who are willing to make less striking changes in their lifestyle can of course be encouraged to reduce their consumption of animal products as much as possible. The paper ends with a simple injunction. Do not eat animal products has the potential to do more for world health than all the abstruse wisdom in all the world's medical libraries put together. In fact, in the process of writing this research paper on the comparative endocrinological effects of plant versus animal protein, the researcher himself disclosed that, during the course of researching, writing this article, my findings impelled me to start eating this way. But why don't more in the scientific and medical community embrace a plant-based diet if the evidence is indeed so overwhelming? And that is what I'd like to close this afternoon with, and that is the so-called tomato effect. This was a concept coined 28 years ago in the Journal of the American Medical Association. What is the tomato effect? It describes the rejection by the medical establishment of treatment of highly efficacious therapies simply because they go against the prevailing conventional wisdom. Now, why do they call it the tomato effect? Well, imported from the New World by the 1500s, the tomato was a staple of the European diet. However, it was actively shunned in North America for literally centuries. Why was it shunned for centuries? The reason is simple. They were poisonous. Everybody knew they were poisonous, at least everyone in North America. It was obvious. Evidently, it wasn't until 1820 when some dude got on the steps of a courthouse, ate a tomato, and survived. Did things finally change? And now those same tomatoes are $1 billion crop here in the United States. All right? So the researchers describe examples in medicine, the so-called tomato effect, this slavish devotion to orthodoxy. For example, ignoring the successful use of this plant for thousands of years before modern medicine discovered it was the drug colchicine. Also, aspirin was 3,000 years ignored as willow tree bark before we realized what it could do. But what I'd like to do is extend this tomato effect analogy into the field of nutrition. For example, thousands died of scurvy, the vitamin C deficiency disease, for a century after lemon juice was found to cure it. Why? Because at the time, disease was considered an imbalance of the humors. So what possible role could a fruit play? Right? By the mid-1800s, a century later, the humanity came up with the bright idea to polish rice from brown to white, causing an epidemic of sudden death in Asia from heart attack. Millions died of beriberi, a vitamin B deficiency that affects the heart muscle. Now we have our white rice is enriched by law, have B vitamins added back to it. But before the enriching process, you live off white rice, you get beriberi, and you die. And in fact, millions did. But again, the cure was discovered. Rice bran, or rice bran tea, the brown part of rice, yet there were decades of death. Again, before the medical community finally embraced the treatment that was proven to work. And today, there is another epidemic of heart disease. It too is caused by diet. It too has a cure. How long must we wait? Thank you.
Two more minutes.
It looks like I got 2 minutes on the clock here.
I thought that was your wrap.
I'm sorry.
I was like, wow, he's done.
I'm sorry I had to skip over so much here. I do have, so this is covering 2011, but this was last summer. Since then, I've made 3 other DVDs. I have them all out for sale on the table outside. All proceeds of everything that I do, books, etc., all goes to charity, of course. And most importantly, everything I do is available free at nutritionfacts.org. Hundreds of videos, I think up to about 700 videos. I'm glad some people are familiar with them. A new video posted every day. You can click on the sources, read the actual original papers yourself. I got a blog, you can follow it on Facebook, Twitter, etc. to share this life-changing, life-saving information with those you care about the most. Thanks again, I'll see you outside.